I did not expect this. I really, we labor in Newark with a great coalition. Sometimes we feel very small and the big challenges. And it's so inspiring to me to have already through CFE met so many soldiers in other parts of the nation. But when I was asked to come speak here, I did not think there would be 1,300 people in an aircraft hangar here. So you all have to forgive me. I was already hyped up on caffeine, a great mixture of Red Bull, Mountain Dew, and the coffee I was served. But now I've got an adrenaline and energy from you that is going to get me in trouble because I'm sure I'm just going to go off right now. But my only goal here right now is to encourage this room as much as this room right now is encouraging me. And, we already heard a little bit of spiritual calls with Dayenu. I want to add to that, Baruch Hashem. I want to add to that, Inshallah, we continue. I want to add to that, Gracias a Dios. And I, of course, want to add to that what my grandmother used to say is, have mercy, have mercy. There's a church in Newark that sort of capsulizes what I feel right now. And this is a story, and as Stephen Colbert would say, this story has a high level of truthiness. The church had a problem with these two young kids, the young brothers. They were cutting up all the time, and the deacons tried to deal with them, the head of the choir. Finally, the minister had to step in and take control. So we invited them down to his office. He sat the younger brother down, had the older brother come into the office and sit down. And now the young man had his arms crossed in the seat. His face was all in a pout. It was like a staring contest. And the minister thought to himself, I've got to try something different. So all the minister did, sitting there as they stared at each other, this little boy and this older minister, he just put his hand on the big Bible on his desk. Nothing else was really there on his desk but this big, well-worn Bible. He put his hand on the Bible, and he said to the boy, my son, tell me, where is God? And the boy's eyes shot open. And the minister thought to himself, wow, I got his attention real quick. Maybe I need to repeat the question. You know how pastors sometimes say it over and over. And this time, he picked the Bible up and he waved it. And this time, he put a little more bass in his voice. And he said, my son, tell me right now, where is God? And now the boy grabbed the armrest and he started shaking. And the pastor's like, wow, I got some mojo going today. And now he stands up. He decides to just pin it home, bring the religion to the boy. And he leans over his desk, waving the big Bible, and he said, tell me now, where is God? And at this point, the boy just has had enough. He jumps up, terrible, shaken from head to toe, sprints out of the pastor's office, grabs his little brother by the hand and says, man, we got to get out of here. God's missing, and the pastor thinks we took him. Now listen, I come from a school of thought. I call it one of my heroes. It's the Frederick Douglass School of Thought, who said very simply, I prayed for years for my freedom, and I remained a slave. It wasn't until I prayed with my hands and prayed with my feet that I found freedom. And this is the challenge we have right now. You see, it's the same message that we know well from our history. That the question is not where is God? The question is where are we? This nation was founded in the highest of ideals. I know it was a savagely imperfect reality then, but these ideals inspired generations of Americans to rise to the challenge, to go from the most challenging of circumstances to find the high ground of moral accomplishment. From immigrants that came in waves, answering that call that America said, give us your tired, your hungry, your huddled masses, the wretched refuse of your teeming shores. It was slaves fixed in bondage that still believed in the principles and the ideals of freedom. It was women that were not even mentioned in our founding documents, that through their activism and leadership and inspiration on these ideals overcame insurmountable odds. Chapter after chapter of American history were freedom fighters who fought to liberate this nation. Now, I want to tell you that this is the metaphorical framework I am using more and more. This idea of what does the freedom of our nation really mean? What does the promise and the hope of America, what is it about? We can't reduce patriotism to flag pins and salutes. We have to make real on those words. And it takes something special that was embodied by that man, Frederick Douglass. There's a wonderful moment, and we politicians, we love a good speech, and there's one that we all know. The second inaugural address of President Lincoln, the man who was said to have freed the slaves. Well, he said in his speech, his second inaugural address, you all know it, with malice towards none, with charity to all, with firmness in the right. As God gives us to see that right, it was an amazing speech, but what was amazing to me, as the historians tell us, what happened after the speech. He returns to a reception. And now folk are coming to see him, from governors of states to common folk who are going to shake the president's hand. And there's one black man who was invited there. This man could barely get in. The historians say he was recognized by somebody and pulled into the reception. And this regal man was standing there in the back, just being humble, though he was one of our nation's greatest leaders. Now, Lincoln, also with his humility, was pushing off his aides who were telling him he had to meet, I think it was the governor of Rhode Island or whomever. He said, no, I need to find my friend. I need to know what he thought of my speech. And finally, he found this man standing there, and he said, my friend, I need to know what you thought of my speech. And the man said, sir, Mr. President, you have people to attend to. He goes, no, I must know what you thought of my speech. And this would be the last time these two men ever talked to each other. In fact, soon the president would be assassinated. And as the president waited for the response, the great Frederick Douglass looked at Lincoln for what would be his last conversation and said, Mr. President, it was a sacred effort. A sacred effort. This room blows me away, because when it comes to the promise and the hope of America, when it comes to the words we sing and say, you all are involved in the sacred effort of liberating this nation. The slavery of generations ago was about physical bondage. The slavery of today is people, good people, great Americans, the soul of our nation, being confined and imprisoned by limited opportunities, by lack of pathway to expand their spirits and their souls, to manifest their truth and their calling, not by any failures of their own, but by our failings of our common country. I see this every day in my city. People that work hard and play by the rules, only to find that they can't afford a pathway to college, only to find that their child was living in a building that was substandard, that had lead paint, or they have asthma rates. All these things that happen to them that undermine their ability to succeed. And who is the lesser because of that? It's not just that individual and their family. We in America must start to recognize that the most valuable natural resource this nation has is not oil in the ground or natural gas. The most powerful natural resource that has fueled this nation to ever heights of success and innovation and industry and achievement in the arts and sciences, the great natural resource of this nation has always been her people. Her children. I go into schools in my city that are not fulfilling or serving the genius of my children and saying, what kind of crime is this? How many great artists and innovators, biologists and chemists, how many Steve Jobses are in my city that have not been discovered because we failed to give them those basic needs? And then comes along folks who don't see things as they are, as my introducer so graciously said. They're people like the woman who was the tenant leader in the high rises I lived in that was mentioned, Miss Virginia Jones. She was this woman of stubborn and practical vision who kept seeing stuff that just wasn't there. And she used to always say that the world you see outside of you is a reflection of what you have inside of you. If you're one of those people who only see problems, darkness, and despair, that's all there's ever going to be. But if you're a stubborn person who every time you open your eyes, you see opportunity, you see possibility, you see hope, you see love, you see the face of God, then you can be a leader. And so in Newark, I've been inspired by folk who refuse to allow the waste of our greatest resources and found ways to get tools in the hands of our citizens. That once given those tools, they build incredible pathways towards contribution. We've joined in a coalition, and I'm so proud that my CFE allies are here and doing incredible things around this country. I've learned from them. I always say good leaders borrow, great leaders steal. I've stolen some great ideas from some of these other cities and other mayors. Seen incredible things happening from as far away as San Francisco to even Mayor Bloomberg, who's given me my best advice ever in politics, which was, Cory, before you become a mayor, you should become a billionaire. In my city, we followed the lead of others and forged our own way and started creating pathways of liberation. I've watched the nonprofit heads, volunteers, become modern-day freedom fighters, and I've seen the expression on the faces of my citizens when they were given those basic, rudimentary tools to build a better pathway of contribution. From our financial aid opening up pathways of opportunity for my youngest, hardest working students. I've seen us doing our Bank On campaign, the VITA centers that have been opening up and proliferating in my city, including one in the basement of City Hall. It's bringing millions of dollars back into the pockets of my citizens. We started one-stop centers for grandparents raising their grandkids because in my city, like many of yours, about 10% of my kids are being raised by their grandparents who find themselves on fixed incomes. Some people might denigrate them for not paying federal income tax. But these folks are making investments and contributions to our country that are incalculable. We've tried in every way, in the grassroots way, in the way this country has overcome slavery and Jim Crow, in the grassroots way, in the way this country has dismantled sweatshops and empowered public education, in the grassroots way, we've been out there trying to create and widen the pathways to contribution and success in this democracy. I've seen success stories now, so many of them, that they get me just pumped up to know that this is a movement now in our country and that each of you are part of this movement. I was just talking to Anthony Santiago, one of the great leaders in my city, who's on leading this movement. I always joke with him that he is the workhorse, I am the show horse. But we were just talking about one of our favorite stories, a couple coming in making less than $25,000 a year into our one-stop. The average family in Newark now goes to our one-stop financial empowerment center, walks out with 10% more in income or benefits. They found out about just the earned income tax credit. We went back 3 years, and they walked away with over $12,000. They made a down payment on a 3-family home. They found out about the first-time homeowners program, and they got more money back. And before you knew it, you took a family in crisis that was dependent upon challenging circumstances, and we turned them into local entrepreneurs, now owning a 3-family home, renting out to others. Now not only are they financially independent, but they're creating wealth and opportunity within our community. This is the many facts in our city that demonstrate what is possible for everyone. You see, I know in my heart that the challenge today, as King so eloquently wrote, is not the vitriolic words and violent actions of the bad people. It's the appalling silence and inaction of the good people. And as King continued to say, change does not ever roll in on the wheels of inevitability. It must be carried in on the shoulders of the dedicated. in the arms of the willing. It must be carried in by freedom fighters, determined to liberate this nation and achieve our most precious values. That is what is in this room. And for anybody in our nation to have this misguided perception that they somehow are independent from their fellow countrymen and women, that they don't owe a debt that they can never repay, who choose to look down on another person, not understanding what my granddaddy always told me, never look down on somebody unless you're extending your hand to help them up. If those who make this mistake, who think that at the laissez-faire or the free market, we just need to get out of folks' way and let the free market take care of everything. Those are folks that don't know our history here in America. We're a people who in every way knew that when you help your neighbor, you help yourself. It's the folks that know how to raise a barn in the Midwest. It's those folks like my parents who always talk about the rent parties they used to have in the northeastern cities. It's my father who tells the stories about people whose names he can't even remember now, who when he was born, a poor boy in North Carolina, he'd heckle me now and say, son, I wasn't poor. What are you talking about? Don't tell the people that. I was just Po, P-O. I couldn't afford the other two letters. I was a po' boy from North Carolina, born to a single mother who couldn't take care of him. It was people in that town that knew it wasn't charity to help him out. It was an investment that would pay dividends that they could not even imagine. I'm here because of folk in that town that put food on his table. I'm here because of folk in that town that put a roof over his head. When it was time to go to college, he could not afford tuition at North Carolina Central University, so he was just going to go out and work. It was people in the town that put dollar bills in envelopes and enabled him to go. When he got to college, he and my mother witnessed what this nation was really about. I had the privilege of being the commencement speaker for my mom's university at her 50th reunion, and she took me around to the tables and introduced me to the people to whom I owe a debt I can't repay. She said this was the woman who ran our voter registration drives. Back then, it was dangerous to do so because you all remember Goodwin, Cheney, and Schwerner. She took me to tables and said this was the person that led the boycott. It was almost like she was saying, and I hate when my mom does it. I have to remind her, Mom, I'm 43 years old. I'm a mayor. Don't treat me like I'm 12. I'm impotent, Mom. But she took me around the tables, almost like she was saying, pay attention, boy. This person fought for you. This person sacrificed for you. I don't know their names, but black people, white people, Asian people, Latino people, Christians, Muslims, Jews, gay and straight marched for me in the civil rights movement, fought for me. In fact, in Washington, D.C., right here in this city where I was born, my mom and dad got their first jobs out of college. And it was blacks and whites coming together, forming an organization called the Urban League that knew it wasn't charity when you open up the doors of corporations that had otherwise been closed to blacks. It wasn't charity to do that. It would expand our economy. It would add to the innovation. It would make America greater. And that's how my parents got their first jobs, working for a small tech firm called IBM. When I moved to Harrington Park, New Jersey, where I grew up, my mom and dad found another group of people who didn't see it as charity to join something called the Fair Housing Council when they wouldn't sell houses to black people in white neighborhoods. My parents saw that, and the people saw that as investing in a greater America. And so there I was growing up in this town. My dad would look at my brother and I. If we ever got proud, they'd say, boy, don't you dare walk around here like you hit a triple. You were born on third base. Anybody in your generation, yes. Anybody in your generation who dares to call themselves American needs to know when they say that they have an obligation to pay because they drink deeply from wells of freedom and liberty and opportunity that they did not dig. They eat lavishly from banquet tables prepared for them by their ancestors. They sit under the shade of trees that they did not plant. This is the call of our country. This is the echoes of our ancestors. This is the challenge of today because this nation ain't finished yet. We have work to do. There is a child being born under the same circumstances as my dad today, born poor to a single mom in a segregated community. And the question is will we provide a better America for that child to cultivate their genius, to apply their will and their wisdom, to manifest the glory of the divine through their energy and their light and their brilliance? Will we provide them the same opportunity that some folk in a small town in North Carolina provided my father? I believe this country is where it is because we understood the profound principle. This is why we fought for liberation in the first place, because we knew that the power of the people is always greater than the people in power. And that if you give folk a chance, when you stand together, not as right or left, but as people determined to move forward, the progress will not just benefit individuals, it will benefit the United States. And so now, this is what we are about in this room. We are the modern day freedom fighters. This is what we are about when we leave here from this conference, going back to our towns and our communities and our cities, is that we are trying to start the next great revolution in America. That says very simply, we need to empower everyone born. We need to make sure that everyone has a pathway to prosperity. Because at the end of the day, if we open up the lanes that they have to walk down themselves, this nation will finally achieve its highest calling. A calling that our children say every single day in our schools. A calling that they yell out in a chorus of conviction, calling at our consciousness for us to be a nation of liberty and justice for all. I want to end with this thought. I'm in awe at the grassroots innovation, the Save USA, the financial empowerment centers, the VITA centers. Heck, my team has gotten so excited. We've done a one-stop centers to empower veterans coming home. I'm so proud of what I see at the grassroots innovation. I really want to leave with the thought that when you leave here today, take a greater courage with you. Because this room is what I believe now, what my parents told me I was the result of. This room right here is a modern-day conspiracy of love. And it was conspirators that joined together in the 1700s to birth this nation. It was conspirators determined to manifest freedom that liberated millions of Americans from chains. It was freedom fighters and conspirators who took us from sweatshops to workers' rights, who took us from child labor to public education, that took us from women denied the right to vote to universal suffrage, that took us every step of the way. Conspirators who, like Miss Virginia Jones, refused to see what was, but continued to dream of what could be. And this, to me, is the call of our country and how I would like you to finally frame it. I want to end with that thought. And let us all go and make an oath. Not an oath with words. As Frederick Douglass says, your oaths and your prayers, let them be with your hands and with your feet. Let's leave here with a determination, with renewed vigor and enthusiasm, that what we are called to do in this movement is a movement of liberation. It's a continuance of the conspiracy. It is a desire to make America real. And so as a child that was grown with parents that wanted them to look at this country in that context, I end with a poem that I'm oft now ending with. It was what my parents read at my bedside amongst other poetry and stories of great Americans from many different backgrounds that they said was a part of the conspiracy that gave life to me. This is the calling of my parents. These are the words of Langston Hughes. When he said very simply in his poem, and I say it proudly now, Oh, let America be America again. The land that never has been yet, but yet must be. The land where everyone is free. The poor man, the Indian, the Negro, me. And who made America? Whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain must make our mighty dream live again. Oh, yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me, but I swear this oath, America will be. Let's swear that oath together. Let's continue the conspiracy. Let's continue the march towards freedom. And let us proclaim one day in a future conference with 5 times as many people in this room that indeed we are the generation that made America free at last, free at last. Thank you.